So moving on, I'm going to right now ask Jenny Coleshill, who has a presentation for us today.
Hi.
Hello, Jenny.
Do we usually have Sorry.
Well, they're all of this.
Yeah. Okay.
And I did email them this morning again.
Okay. So I'm giving this presentation on behalf of the Ministry of Environment. Their initiative, they started the Species and Ecosystems at Risk Local Government Working Group. The leader of this, Bryn White, I've been talking with her and she was asking me my connections to the community and ways I could get our community involved. So I came up with a couple ideas of maybe where we could present this presentation, and I thought the Environment Committee would be a great place to get everyone in the city and the regional district. So I've only run over this once or twice, so forgive me if I stutter a little bit, but on behalf of the Ministry of Environment and the South Okanagan-Snoqualmie Environmental Planning Roundtable. So this group is a Species at Risk and Ecosystems Local Government Working Group. They work towards the goal of enhancing species and ecosystems at risk protection on private and local government lands in British Columbia. This group is a forum that comes together and they communicate and make consensus and collaboration on these issues in BC. There's over 90 participants in the group with elected staff, and anyone is welcome to this group, to this working group. The challenge of protecting species and ecosystems at risk on private land is a big challenge. 6% of BC is private land, and there's a high proportion of these species and ecosystems on private land. For example, 38% of known occurrences of plants at risk occur on private land, and residential and commercial development is the most common threat. UBC polls suggest strong public support for protection of species and ecosystems at risk. The graph we see on the right is just a representation of the occurrences of species and ecosystems at risk on different on land. So if you take British Columbia, 34% of species and ecosystems at risk are very localized, and only 10% of species and ecosystems at risk will be found across BC. For example, like our tiger salamander, our mottled blotched tiger salamander is only found in this tiny little chunk of the southern interior of BC, here and a little bit in the Okanagan. So land tenure is also a challenge, different land tenures across the regions. A number of known occurrences of red-listed species on different land tenures in BC. So this is just a calculation of the different red-listed species on each kind of land. The TFL means timber farm license lands. So this initiative formed in the autumn of 2009 in response to the Minister of Environment's interest in developing a collaborative provincial vision for species and ecosystems protection on private land. The initial discussions gathered information from local governments about issues related to species and ecosystems at risk, gaps, barriers, problems, interest, and also interest in working together. So the working group formed was a partnership between municipal governments, regional districts, UBCM, and the provincial government. It was coordinated by the Ministry of Environment with joint decisions making by local governments. There's over 90 members, 70 local government staff and elected officials, and 18 provincial government staff, plus UBCM and federal governments involved. Though there are current biases in this working group of a highly more proportion of technical and environmental professionals, and mostly concentrated in southern BC as well. So not so much representation from the north. This is what the group has done to date, a list of things they've done, workshops, presentations, so on. Just read through that for a second. Discussion papers, and The biggest thing that they've come up with is I think it's on the next one, yeah. This is what they've developed. It's a big discussion paper, and it includes a common province-wide approach to protecting species and ecosystems at risk on local government and private lands. The target audience for this paper is senior executives at all government levels, key land trusts, non-government organizations, and provincial species at risk task force. In the document, it identifies issues and needs from a local government perspective. It contains 45 recommendations and it is built around 5 key strategies. These strategies include an increase in local government awareness of species and ecosystems at risk, facilitate use of effective tools and techniques, identify and collaborate on shared responsibilities, conduct ecosystem mapping and encourage data sharing, and engage landowners in species and ecosystems at risk habitat protection. The terms of reference for the working group. The purpose creates a forum for communication and consensus to allow for collaborative work on species and ecosystems at risk issues in BC. Their approach recognizes existing work that already happens in local governments. It's a regional implementation and recognizes the local governments as a leadership role in that region. For example, so that Okanagan Snoqualmie, they're the leaders in that region. The roles and responsibilities from the Ministry of Environment, by the Ministry of Environment, is to coordinate this local government working group. They provide resources, including staff time, information, and when possible, funds for workshops. And they also give regular updates on provincial legislation or policy related to species and ecosystems at risk that directly impacts local governments. So currently they are coming up with a strategic plan, a 5-year plan for the group. It identifies annual focus centered around 5 key strategies. Annual local government working group meetings, enables work planning, so requesting funding and getting a budget, organizing a budget, etc. Provincial perspective, it outlines how the province can support local government and stewardship. Creates structure for developing province-wide strategic documents, and establishes a steering committee with local governments representing it and rotates around each year, and also the Ministry of Environment, the Ministry of Forest, Lands, and Natural Resource Operations, and UBCM. And it will also create linkages with the provincial species and ecosystems at-risk 5-year plan. So their next steps are to initiate sub-working groups in 4 to 5 regions, pilot implementation of recommendations and identifications of priorities and gaps in the Okanagan summer of 2012, and regionally focus to broaden discussions amongst local governments and local conservation groups, and complete this local government working group 5-year plan and consider the best approach to include northern communities in this. And that's the information for the leads in this initiative. And there's a website with the document on it and different links. And there we go. Questions or clarifications? Karen?
Sounds like a lot of talking about stuff. Does this committee have any teeth? Does it have the ear of anybody who can make a difference? A couple of things stand out, such as the fact that the northern communities are not as involved, and it's fine to try and protect our salamanders, but we also have spirit bears, and we also have China talking about the largest international buyout in history, $15.1 billion of NextGen, and the Canadian resources that is involved with. So I guess one of the things I would like to know is, are we doing more than talking about things? Are there the means to actually implement things, or is this a committee that's going to be restricted to forming papers? I guess that's the thing. We're sitting around, we're talking about things, and meanwhile there are these these huge projects to go and put the oil and gas and all the tar sands oil through some of British Columbia's most pristine wilderness areas. So I don't think that the spirit bears or any of the ecosystems up there should be compromised, because at this point the northern communities haven't become involved. So I would like to see something about active lobbying, making people more aware, so it's not just talking among ourselves, but we're actually doing something to help educate people and voters and the people who will let politicians know that this is a really, really key opportunity for all of these.
Right. I guess I can't really answer your question, Karin, but from what I can see is that it is a government initiative, and so the government lobbying the government is maybe not in their mandate, if you understand what I mean. So it's just one way that they can connect with local governments to talk about, you know, localized issues of species at risk. Yeah, but I don't think I can.
Maybe I could add something for you.
Yeah, sure.
UBCM is coming up, and Gary, Councillor Smith here, will be attending UBCM. And Gary, I'm sure you've been receiving emails on your council laptop from concerned citizens regarding the Enbridge project as well. So we figure it's going to be a very hot topic at UBCM. And so this is one opportunity where Councillor Smith can possibly watch out for this and
Absolutely.
report back to us for the next meeting.
Go get 'em, Gary.
Yeah, so
Go protect our wildlife.
Yes.
you know, just knowing what we are seeing right now on our laptops locally here, and that's where we can work with the provincial government through UBCM, through AKBLG, your regional representative corps. So yeah, by all means, any information you'd like to send on to us or your concerns, we'd like to hear.
Yeah. And if I mean to just add
Yes.
a little bit,
Go ahead.
I'm going to make every opportunity to spend as many years as I possibly can. So I'm looking out for us.
All right, that's our guy. Thanks, Gary.
And one resolution that we do have before UBCM is the Wildlife Management Act. We don't have a Wildlife Management Act in British Columbia. There are wildlife management plans around the province. I believe there's about 22 of them. But there's no actual provincial wildlife management plan. And Gary's going to be carrying the message on behalf of Grand Forks that strategically we'd like to see this plan established under the Ministry of Environment and not with the Ministry of Forest, Lands and Resources, because they're working with land issues. We want an exclusive ministry looking after our wildlife, because another issue for local governments is we shouldn't have to be putting money in our local budgets to manage wildlife that are conflicting in our urban areas. And this year, Grand Forks put $35,000 into a deer committee, and
The province should be taking care of it.
And it's another downloading that we've seen. I mean, we can do all this planning and deer counts and everything else, but the bottom line is the provincial government is the last call on what we can do with those animals. So there is the act, but we need a management plan. So that is the resolution that we are taking to UBCM. So I'm sure Gary is going to give them an earful.
You betcha.
Because it's, like you said, Karin, there's lots of talk, there's been lots of, and we saw with UBCM when they endorsed the resolution, they do provide us with the number on the different years that this has been brought before UBCM. So believe me, it's been on there for many years, and it's time to act. So we're hoping that we can make a loud enough noise to get things going. Okay?
Yeah, and maybe I'll just end with, I think we're kind of already starting to, a stewardship plan, to work to protect our species at risk here. We have a lot of them. For example, the woodpecker, we've been talking in the past few months about a stewardship agreement between the city and perhaps the Ministry or Granby Wilderness Society or something, about protecting wildlife trees in the riparian areas and whatnot, and perhaps enhancing some habitat areas. I did go and just met with Jim Holmes and Herman. Is it Herman? Elmar, sorry. Elmar last week at Roxall, and they were just kind of showing me their plans and have some plans for planting some trees along the river, and I suggested maybe that we could use some native trees because they were thinking juniper was thrown out there because of its low water usage and whatnot, and I said maybe we can use cottonwood because it's helps the Lewis's woodpecker and go to the river and fast growing, no log. So yeah, making these connections and relationships I think are great, and I think that's what is really going to count for saving species at risk is the local work that happens.
And in your package, there is a Lewis woodpecker census that we received from the Okanagan Wildlife Group. So I just wrote the home base here in Grand Forks for the Lewis's woodpecker. So I did include a copy in conjunction with Jenny's presentation this morning to let you know that the information that does come into your local government, and we'd like to really pass this information along to everybody as we receive it. So thank you, Jenny.
Yeah, yes, thank you.
Very good.